lecture on Derrida's essay. Slowly, I am going one by one paragraph because you may feel it difficult to understand if I give you the gist. I'll be giving the gist or notes like thing at the end of my what you call the lecture series. You have enough time, don't worry. So let us start where we have stopped actually. Sharing the screen, I will start the continue the explanation which we were doing in the previous class. So, in the previous class, we have stopped with our discussion regarding the anti-structuralist views of Derrida. So, Derrida feels that a structuralism, while speaking of the structure, never allows the play of the signs within it. And he says that the center is no more a center. And we that is why he says that we have to think that there is no center. That means the center should be decentered. The decentering of the center is advocated by Derrida, and how he tried to explain that though the history of the Western metaphysics or the Western society is actually the was dealing with this concept of structure. He feels that this structure was not broken in the sense the structure is always remaining a circle instead of allowing the play of other signs or other elements. So he says that in the human sciences, what is happening? So after giving his views on the structuralism, which is not a new concept. Structuralism, we feel that based on the works of Ferdinand de Saussure, of course, his concepts of sign, signifier, and signified have revived or were a very revolutionary ideas, you know, in what you call during the closure of the 18th century. And they have opened a new to the closure of the 19th century, and they have opened up a new era of thinking or looking at language or looking at structures, etc. But Derrida feels that the structuralism, even though is based on new ideas, it is still holding the structure, strictly limiting the play. Okay, that is what he says. So the structuralism need to, according to Derrida, he says structuralism is not a new thing. And he says it is always there in the history of the Western metaphysics or the Western history. And he refers to the decentering efforts of Nietzsche, okay, and Freud and Heidegger. Yet he concludes stating that they are also operating in the structure only, within the structure, and then they devalued, of course, themselves, because Nietzsche is criticized by Heidegger, and the same can be applied to Heidegger's theory also. So what Derrida wants to say is that in the whole history of the Western metaphysics, the structure remained a closed structure only, which will not allow the play. And then after his discourse on the concepts or the scenario of structuralism, and how we are again going back, and he says the whole history of Western metaphysics is the history of the concept of presence, which of course was given different names. Okay, those names we have already mentioned, like essence or existence, okay, and others. So he says that if you look back to the whole history of the Western metaphysics in the philosophy or in the history, You may find new words, but actually all those new words were going back to one old concept, that is the presence. And the presence is the center. And he says that the center is locking the play of the signs. And it is every time coming back to the center only. And always the concept of presence is emphasized, and no one actually thinks of the absence. Okay, so the thinking of the absence or decentering of the center will be a revolutionary idea, but that does not happen in the history of the metaphysics according to Derrida. And now in this part of the essay he says that let us see what is the formal schema when we turn to what are called the human sciences. So in the human sciences, what is happening about this presence of the structure was that, what were there any attempts to attempts made for decentering the center, etc. Let us see. And he is taking actually the example of ethnology. Ethnology is a branch which studies the culture. Okay, one culture. Okay, one culture against the other culture, etc. But he says here, in fact, one can assume that ethnology could have been born as a science only at the moment when a decentering had come about. So he says that to think that ethnology is a branch of science or it has born when the decentering was happening, it is not true. So he, according to him, ethnology also did not allow decentering at the moment when European culture, and in consequence the history of metaphysics and of its concepts had been dislocated, driven from its locus and forced to stop considering itself as the culture of reference. So he says now, no, ethnology cannot be even considered as a dislocation from the circle of the Western metaphysics. Actually, he says that this moment is not first and foremost a moment of philosophical or scientific discourse. He says the development of the ethnology is not at all a moment of philosophical or scientific discourse. It is also a moment which is political, economic, technical, and so forth. He considers that ethnology is a kind of political, economic, technical field. One can say with total security that there is nothing virtuous about the fact that the critique of ethnocentrism, the very condition for ethnology, should be systematically and historically contemporaneous with the destruction of the history of metaphysics. So, ethnology, of course, studies ethnocentrism. Okay, and ethnocentrism actually should be studied only with the destruction of the history of metaphysics. And he says both belong to one era. So they are in one era. Ethnology, like any science, comes about within the element of discourse. And it is primarily a European science employing traditional concepts, however much it may struggle against them. So he says, though we feel that ethnology is a new branch of knowledge, say in the 20th century or to the closure of the 19th century, he says that there is nothing new in it, and he is considering it as a European science. And this science has employed the traditional concepts only, and though it has to work against those traditional concepts, that those traditional concepts are employed. This is actually peculiar to the discourse in the human sciences according to Derrida, because previously he stated that we don't have a language, we don't have a lexicon, a new language, new lexicon is not possible. So What we have is old lexicon only, and we have to though we have to build up new areas or new discourses, we have to go through them only. And that is why he says that even ethnology, which is considered to be a decentering field or area of discourse, and which may dislocate the center, or which may be non-locus, etc., is no more a decentric according to Derrida, which is not a dislocation. And he says, consequently, whether he wants to or not, and this does not depend on a decision on his part, the ethnologist accepts into his discourse the premises of ethnocentrism at the very moment when he denounces them. So he has to accept whatever are the premises of ethnocentrism at the very moment when he denounces them. So though he started learning about different cultures, he begins with the principles or premises of ethnocentrism, the traditional principles only. This necessity is irreducible, and it is not a historical contingency. He says that we can't remove this facet of this branch of study, and we ought to consider all its implications very carefully. But if no one can escape this necessity, and if no one is therefore responsible for giving into it, however little he may do so, this does not mean that all the ways of giving in to it are of equal pertinence. Uh, of course, he says that there is no other way to study ethnology without referring to the premises of ethnocentrism. The quality and fecundity of a discourse are perhaps measured by the critical rigor with which this relation to the history of metaphysics and inherited concepts is thought. So, of course, the history and the metaphysics, of course, are related actually. So he says that it is a question of critical relation to the language and of the social sciences, and the critical responsibility of the discourse itself. So a field like ethnology is studied, and it was also studied on the premises of the traditional metaphysics or traditional ethnocentrism, etc. And he tries to analyze this with the example of one of the great anthropologists, Claude Lévi-Strauss. He takes the example of Claude Lévi-Strauss. Let us see what he says. It is not only because of the privilege accorded to ethnology among the social sciences, nor even because the thought of Levi-Strauss weighs heavily on the contemporary theoretical situation. So, why he is taking this example? Because he says that it is not because Levi-Strauss ethnology is privileged above all other human social sciences, and not also because Levi-Strauss, okay, is considered to be a contemporary theoretical situation. It is above all because a certain choice has been declared in the work of Levi-Strauss, and because a certain doctrine has been elaborated. So why he is taking the example of ethnology? He is taking ethnology, and that too the example of Claude Lévi-Strauss. So in this paragraph, he is saying that he has chosen Claude Lévi-Strauss and ethnology because a certain doctrine has been elaborated. Lévi-Strauss elaborated one particular doctrine, okay, and precisely in a more or less explicit manner, as concerns both this critique of language and this critical language in the social sciences. And he thinks that, Derrida thinks that this is somewhat relevant to the critique of language and this critical language in the social sciences. So, in order to follow this movement in the text of Levi-Strauss, let us choose as one guiding thread among others, the opposition between nature and culture. Actually, Claude Lévi-Strauss is an anthropologist or ethnologist also who studied cultures, and within culture also he proceeded to study the binary of nature culture. The binary. See, Derrida's aim is to deconstruct the nature binaries actually. So here we have to see nature culture binary, and Levi-Strauss proceeded to um, establish what is nature, what is culture in his work. Okay. Despite all its reservations and disguises, this opposition is congenial to philosophy. He says that nature culture binary, of course, is always there, though it is in different forms in philosophy. It is from the birth of philosophy, it is there. It is even older than Plato. And he says that this nature culture binary, say, for example, God is nature and culture means man. God, man, of course, that is also there. So he says that this nature culture binary, of course, is not a new topic, which Levi-Strauss actually proceeded to study as part of ethnology. And Derrida says that it is there even before Plato and all the followers of the Sophocles, sophists. Okay. So sophists, they are the philosophers and teachers active in Greece in the 5th century BC. See, actually, sophists are those. Let me check who are the sophists. 1 minute. Yeah, Plato we know, but whether the sophists are the followers of Sophocles, is a writer. Socrates. Yeah, sophists is a paid teacher or philosophy and rhetoric in Greece in the classical and Hellenistic period, associated in popular thought with moral skepticism and specious reasoning, and a person who reasons with clever but false arguments. So, sophist is specialized in music, mathematics, etc. Sophists are very clever philosophers according to um, the definitions. So they are philosophers and teachers, and they have already mentioned this binary. And since the statement of the opposition, so this nature culture is nothing but the statement of the opposition. Some Greek words are given over there, and it has been relayed to, yeah, it has been relayed to us by means of a whole historical chain with opposes nature to law, to education, to art, to techniques, but also to liberty, to the arbitrary, to history, to society, to the mind, and so on. So it is a way of thinking or argumenting in philosophy that is always present. This nature culture which opposes nature to law. So nature and law, nature, education, nature, art, etc. Now, from the outset of his researches and from his first book, that is The Elementary Structures of Kinship on Levi-Strauss, simultaneously has experienced the necessity of utilizing this opposition and the impossibility of accepting it. Okay, he started studying this opposition, and but finally he utilized this opposition necessary to explain some concepts or to explain some points of view, he felt that this using this binary of nature culture is necessary. And then of course accepting it is also impossible, yet he used it. So in the elementary structures, that is the book written by um, Levi-Strauss, and he means Levi-Strauss begins from this axiom or definition that no, he actually proceeded in his research work with a kind of definition that which is universal and spontaneous and not dependent on any particular culture or on any determinate norm belongs to nature. So, what is nature? How to define nature? This is how Levi Strauss actually defined nature for himself, for his research views. What is that? Which is universal and spontaneous and not dependent on any particular culture or on any determinate norm. So these are the, to consider that this is nature, we have to see that it should be natural, it should be universal, spontaneous, and not dependent upon any culture or not determinate in are determined by any norm. This is nature. Inversely, that which depends upon a system of norms regulating society and therefore is capable of varying from one social structure to another belongs to culture. So when you say nature, nature should be what you call equal. Everywhere it should be the same. Okay. And the opposite is culture. So what is it is determined by a norm, means a particular rule or specification, and it of course is dependent upon a particular culture and depends upon a system of norms regulating society and therefore is capable of varying from one social structure to another belongs to culture. So if it is changing or different from one social to structure to another, Levi-Strauss concluded that that can be considered under culture, and whatever is universal, spontaneous, not dependent upon any culture is natural. So these two definitions are of the traditional type. Derrida says with the traditional type of definitions, Levi-Strauss actually has began his research work. But in the very first phases of the elementary structures, that is in his book Levi-Strauss, who has begun by giving credence to these concepts, encounters what he calls a scandal. So, but when he began with these definitions of nature and culture, but unfortunately, Levi Strauss could not progress in his research because in the very beginning of his research, he confronted a scandal. So, what is that scandal? You know, that is to say, something which no longer tolerates the nature culture opposition he has accepted. So he encountered, while studying the cultures, he encountered something which will not be fixed in the binary either of nature or culture. Something which simultaneously seems to require the predicates of nature and of culture. So this scandal actually appeared to Levi Strauss that it requires the predicates of nature as well as culture. So this scandal is the incest prohibition. So what is incest? You all know, I hope. Incestual relationships means the sexual relationship within the family members or brothers, sisters, etc. So the incest prohibition is universal. In this sense, one could call it natural. But it is also a prohibition. That means a system of norms and interdicts. In this sense, one could call it cultural. So when it came to this incest prohibition, he encountered this difficulty of defining or fitting it into either nature or culture, because incest prohibition he thought is universal. But when you say prohibition, it is a system of norms and interdicts in this sense, one could call it cultural. So let us suppose then that everything universal in man relates to the natural order and is characterized by spontaneity, and that everything subject to a norm is cultural and is both relative and particular. This is the quote from Levi Strauss. So he started his research like this. We are then confronted with a fact, or rather a group of facts, which in the light of previous definitions are not far removed from a scandal. We refer to that complex group of beliefs, customs, conditions, and institutions described succinctly as the prohibition of incest, which presents without the slightest ambiguity and inseparably combines the two characteristics in which we recognize the conflict features of two mutually exclusive orders. It constitutes a rule, but a rule which alone among all the social rules possesses at the same time a universal character. So there is no scandal except within a system of concepts which accredits the difference between nature and culture. By commencing his work with the factum of the incest prohibition, Levi-Strauss thus places himself at the point at which this difference, which has always been assumed to be self-evident, finds itself erased or questioned. So, after uh, perhaps proceeding to examine the some of the specimen cultures or cultures which he took into consideration, he could not define that this is either natural or cultural. For from the moment when the incest prohibition can no longer be conceived within the nature culture opposition, it can no longer be said to be scandalous fact, a nucleus of opacity within a network of transparent significations. You know, when you start observing the cultures, and when you cannot consider this as completely natural or completely cultural, etc., it no more remains a scandal. Okay. And you know the incest prohibition is no longer a scandal, because it comes up against in the domain of traditional concepts. It is something which escapes these concepts and certainly precedes them, probably as the condition of their possibility. It could perhaps be said that the whole of philosophical conceptualization, which is systematic with the nature culture opposition, is designed to leave the domain of the unthinkable the very thing that makes this conceptualization possible, that is the origin of the prohibition of the incest. So, whether to put this scandal, if it is natural, you may not call it a scandal. And if it is cultural, where is the necessity to prohibit? So, this is where actually we have to understand that um, the concepts or some what you call concepts are beyond the uh, fixation of a structure, say a binary structure. So now when it comes to this point, we we will know that we cannot fix them into a structure. Yet the structure, now we have to think that all things in the universe cannot be grouped either on either this side or that side. And that is where the problem starts. So, how to examine this example, and what can we derive out of this, and how Levi Strauss proceeded with his what do you call research, we will discuss in the next class. Hope you are listening to the lectures, and also if you have any interactions, you need not worry about the handouts I'll be giving to you, because your exams are not at schedule. No hurry, I will be giving you all the notes. One of the girl students has asked me for the notes on heteroglossia. I will also share that. I have some notes that I have, scribbled, but I have to put them into order. I'll make it and send it to you. So hope all of you are doing well. Yes, I actually extend my deep felt condolences to Susanna, who lost her mother 2 days back. It's a very sad incident. And I hope the other two girls, Susila and Alekia, are recovering. And also I hope all other students are doing well. And please, you stay home and stay safe, and take care of your health also, okay, while studying, because the study cannot be put aside, because life, whatever happens, should go on, as you all know that. And once the situation clears, you may have to rush back to the classes, and then for the exams, because you are already late, you know that. Okay, so don't waste your time. Try to um, be studious, keep studying. That is a way of keeping your mind out of agitation, looking at the alarming situations outside. Okay, take care.